Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1104, written by DextroSkeletal. The moon moved faster than light. Once, my now ex-wife and I left a friend's house to go back to a house a block down the street. When we left, the moon was in the middle of the sky. By the time we got home, I noticed it was much closer to the horizon. I first thought it was simply the angle from which we had viewed it originally vs where we were viewing it now. As we stood watching it out of the kitchen window, it was actually moving so quickly we could see its position changing in relation to the objects on the horizon. In short order, it was completely gone behind the horizon. I've tried watching the moon once it was near the horizon since, but it's never seemed to move this fast. There was another time I had very intense déjà vu that lasted perhaps half an hour. It was overwhelming. Years later, I started getting déjà vu frequently. I got this idea that I exist in a simulation, and whomever the operators were planning on waking me up. Movies like The Matrix and Vanilla Skies only added to this obsession as I got the idea that the movies were inserted into my life to tell me something. Case notes for file 1104. The moon moved faster than light. So there are ways to mess with perception. The angle of your viewing of the moon through the atmosphere at different elevations or different angles can sometimes be curved and appear to move when it's not, or even go out of view so you can't see it anymore, or see it when it's technically not in your line of sight because light is bending. Personally, I don't think the moon is fake or that we're on a flat earth or anything like that. But that said, there are a lot of reports of oddities surrounding our little lunar light, so I can't discount those. My favorite are the cases where the moon is described to ripple, like a projection that's out of phase. Are all of these merely atmospheric perception anomalies, distortions through the thick cloud that we live under? Maybe. But maybe there is more to it. I don't think it's fake necessarily, but maybe there are interactions on the moon that we're not. Case file number 1105, written by Savigi13, a duplicated purple Titan Wildcat mountain bike. Context. When I was in high school, 16 or 17, I'm 27 now, my family was, let's just say, lower middle class. I came from a family of 5 kids, I was the oldest, so money was often tight. Despite being driving age, my parents couldn't afford to help me pay for a car, so my bike was the only thing I had if I needed to get somewhere my parents refused to drive me to. Glitch in question. We lived on the corner lot on my block. Because of that, we had a bigger front lawn that my siblings used to leave their bikes out on all the time. My mom used to get pissed because my brother went through bikes left and right. She would always threaten us, saying that if we didn't put our bikes away, they would rust or get stolen, and she wouldn't replace them. One day I got home from a friend right before it started to rain, making it a point to put my bike in the garage ASAP. About 20 minutes later, my mom burst into my room screaming at me about my bike being out in the rain. At this point, I figured maybe my brother had taken my bike and didn't put it back. He did this from time to time. I went outside and found my bike lying on the far corner of our front lawn, right next to the sidewalk. I walked my bike up to the garage, pissed that my brother took my bike without asking. He got me in trouble for it. But when I opened the garage, my bike was already inside, right where I had put it earlier. I stood there utterly confused with literally the exact same bike in my hands, the same brand, the same color, purple Titan Wildcat mountain bike with handbrakes. Same everything, it even looked like my bike, exactly. To this day, I still have no idea where that bike came from. No one ever came to claim it or say it was missing. My siblings also to this day still claim to not be responsible for bringing it home. The bike is actually still hanging in my parents' garage, right next to my actual bike. Thinking about this interaction often leaves me with a weird feeling of being watched. I chose to accept this as a glitch mostly because the alternative of who or whatever left this bike on my lawn being close enough to know what bike I rode and where I lived creeps me out much worse. Has anyone else ever had an item duplicate itself? Case notes are file 1105. A duplicated purple Titan Wildcat mountain bike. So I love this because it's confirmation that duplicated items don't have to be small. Typically they are, but in this case, nope. An entire bike. Makes you wonder if people have entire cars duplicating. You think at a point that would hit the news though, What if all the gold in Fort Knox duplicated? Would they even tell anyone? Probably not. Maybe it'll rain down money. Case file number 1106, written by Molecule 2003, The Old Man's Warning. 3 years ago, in spring 2013, I used to work at a small manufacturing firm. Every morning I would get on the number 8 bus to get to work. The bus ride takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes. I would arrive at the entrance to my office building, leaving me about 30 minutes early. And as usual, my coworker who works beside my desk would offer to buy me coffee. One morning I was going to work on the usual number 8 bus. I looked out the window and the fog was very thick. I remember it due to the very heavy rain last night. Then, as I slowly looked around, I saw there were only elderly people riding on the bus. Suddenly, an old man sitting behind me whispered, "You shouldn't be here. Get off the next stop quickly." I felt very strange, and following my instinct, I got off the next stop. As soon as I did, I saw a young woman entering the bus. I couldn't see clearly, but I was sure it looked like a familiar face. Then I woke up. I woke up learning it was a dream. I decided to forget about it and prepared to go to work. I realized my loafers were wet from the rain yesterday, so I took out an old pair and headed out. Once out of my apartment building, an old man wearing a security vest was sweeping the grounds of the entrance. I stopped to check that my right shoelace was untied and proceeded to kneel down and tie it. Then out of the blue, the old man said, "Terrible weather, isn't it? Not a great day for cars. Best to walk." As soon as he finished, he turned around to continue sweeping the ground. I couldn't recognize who the man was, even in my 2 years of staying at the apartment. I have never seen him before. I headed towards the bus stop, just a few steps outside the entrance. After standing there for a few minutes, I realized the bus wasn't coming. Then I remember my dream. I decided to walk to work, though it may take up 30 minutes of my time. I arrived at my office not too late. I hurried to my desk as I prepared for a meeting that morning. My coworker, who usually would have a cup of coffee in her hand, said she couldn't buy any coffee at her usual cafe. She started to explain how the manager had closed the cafe and left in a hurry. That afternoon, as I was having my late lunch, I was surfing the internet when the news headline caught me off guard. I started to read about an accident that happened near my apartment. The number 8 bus had crashed into another car as it lost its brake pedals that morning. Among the injured and casualties, a young woman passed away from severe head contusion and blood loss. Judging by the name, I realized it was the wife of the manager of the coffee store my coworker always goes to. That night, as soon as I got off work, I tried checking with my landlord about an old man working in the security staff of my apartment. He thoroughly mentioned he has never hired or seen a man as a security staff. It's been 3 years since that incident. Case notes for file 1106, The Old Man's Warning. So I find it infinitely curious how our subconscious desperately attempts to convey information to our conscious experience of the world. It's like a waitress on rollerblades trying to bring out 10 dishes at the same time over a gravel road, but somehow she figures it out. And yet when it does, the pieces can be out of order, mismatched, packaged up in ways that don't necessarily make intuitive sense. But it's very clear the information was truthful, accurate in its core intent. It's a warning. But your mind was trying to interpret what the subconscious was giving you, so it was constructing a dream first, and then there was this old man. I don't know if the old man was identical from the one on the bus versus the one you saw in real life. You know, there may have been a security guard there, but your mind just overlaid this appearance of an old man, maybe because to you, you respect your elders. And so you appreciate the warning of an elder more than if it was just some random person with a middle-aged or younger. That makes sense. And then, of course, the warning was conveyed to you in a way that you would accept. Because if it was just like, this is going to happen, believe me, maybe you wouldn't have. It had to be more subtle to actually convince your conscious mind. And now time for the quote of the day. I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. Andy Bernard. You have to embrace every moment because you don't know where you're going to be in 5 years or tomorrow. You know, it's that adage of living like you're not going to see tomorrow. I don't think that's necessarily conveying the full point. I think it's just embrace the future without knowing what it'll be and make the best of every day you can. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.